I am going to walk you through my first rehearsal, whatever rehearsals I can remember in between, up into my Broadway debut with The Lion King.
My name is Adrienne Walker, and I am a Broadway performer. I want to share with you what I've learned about the business so far. Welcome to 32 Bar Cut.
Here's a disclaimer. I have a terrible memory, so this is probably going to be the most rambling you will see in your life. But I'm going to try and stay focused. Okay, so before I started rehearsals with The Lion King, I was on tour with Dirty Dancing. If you haven't seen my audition story, I'll make it available in some kind of way, somewhere on this video or down below. But I was on tour with Dirty Dancing, and my agent let me know that The Lion King wanted me to condition, to work on ballet and Pilates. Well, I was on tour, so I did the best that I could. I probably could have done better with that if we're being honest, but I took some private ballet lessons, I took a few yoga classes, and I was like, maybe this is good enough. It was not good enough. I found that out in my second week of rehearsal when I started conditioning for the Nala track. A few months later, I secured a sublet so that I could move to New York, because at this time my home base was Chicago. So my fiance Austin, now husband, my fiance Austin had our apartment in Chicago, but now I needed to get a sublet in New York for the 3 months that I was going to be there until we both moved permanently to New York. I found a really cool sublet with 2 other girls and got on a flight and flew out to New York to start rehearsals. I had never lived in New York at the time. I was still learning the subway system, as you probably know from my previous video. And I was nervous and excited and all of the things. Before my first rehearsal, I did make sure that I was off book. I knew the script as well as the songs. My first rehearsal was actually at the Minskoff in the lobby. They had a table set up. I walked in, I met Jelani Remy for the first time. He played Simba in 2016. And I met John Stefanik and Deborah Shrimpton and our stage manager, Antonia. And I believe that's all who were in that first rehearsal. And so John Stefanik had Jelani and I do just a cold read with each other, and we read through all of our scenes and then sang. I sang Shadowland, he sang Endless Night. I don't think that we sang Can You Feel together yet. And that was my first rehearsal. It was very quick. It was only a couple of hours. We kind of had like an interview session where John asked me questions about what I thought about the show and things like that. It wasn't deep at all. And then that night I got to see the show, and I remember sitting down and it really just hitting me again that, oh my gosh, in 4 weeks, I'm going to be doing this. And so I hadn't seen The Lion King probably in about, I want to say about 7 years or so since that night in 2016 when I watched it again. And I did not really remember how physical the Nala track was. So when I'm sitting down and I'm watching it, they did the Nala Simba fight and it went by so fast. I couldn't believe it. I was like, I don't even know what I watched, but I'm terrified to do this. And unfortunately, that was the moment that the seed of terror was planted. And it took me several months to fight through that terror and be very comfortable, or at least somewhat comfortable, with the Nala Simba fight. If you haven't seen the show, I don't want to ruin anything for you, but there is a bit of a trust leap that happens in that Nala Simba fight. And when you're walking into an experience where everyone you're meeting is new and you haven't developed trust yet, it takes a lot to do something like that, to run and leap in someone's arms and know that they've got you. And so we had to build that. Jelani and I had to build that level of trust, and the wonderful men who covered Jelani, we had to build that level of trust. I met Carl German, I think on my second rehearsal, and he's our maestro. He's our music supervisor on the scene, on site at the Minskoff. Okay, so let's go back to the second day of rehearsal. So the second day of rehearsal was mainly not a movement day, but a music day, as well as a Javanese and Balinese movement day. And so all John had us do was really just go through and learn some of the vocabulary, some of the movement vocabulary of that movement that's very unique to the Lion King. We did a little scene work with Timon and Pumbaa, and then that was it. I came in every day with workout clothes on because I knew that we would be getting in and moving and everything. And my rehearsal was usually from 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. with only 10-minute breaks and 5-minute breaks scattered throughout. So I always came into rehearsal with 2 sets of clothing options because I got so sweaty I needed to change during one of those breaks. And I brought in snacks, quick snacks like almonds or yogurt and granola and an apple or a banana, and that's it. That's all I would eat, and that's and just so that I wouldn't get sick in between breaks and everything. And so each day they kind of built me up into learning more and more. I don't think I started learning blocking until day 3, and all of my rehearsal venues were different. Sometimes we would be at Ripley Greer. Sometimes we would be in the lobby of the Minskoff. Very rarely was I ever rehearsing on stage, because when you rehearse on stage, you have to call the crew, and that's more money. So usually I was rehearsing in a studio or in the lobby. And for me, I found that to be challenging because it was difficult to commit things to memory with the venue always changing. I don't know if that's something that you experience when you're learning things. I know when I've learned shows in the past and we'll have a rehearsal space and then we move to the theater, it's such a big thing, and we walk the set and you get familiar with the set and where your body will be and transferring that rehearsal space to the stage space. Well, when your rehearsal space is constantly changing, it's like, I don't know what's going on. Wait, is this stage right or left? Or wait, I stand here, the context was changing. And the stage is very expansive, and the rehearsal rooms never really could fill that space that the stage really takes up. Another thing to consider was when I started learning the choreography, and there's a lot of jumping and running and excited movement. I just felt like I was in a cave because a lot of the ceilings in these rehearsal spaces were really low. And those are just my mental blocks. I wish that I didn't consider those and I could have gotten past them, but they were definitely blocks for me when I was learning the show. I remember I had a costume fitting actually months before I even got to New York. I left tour for a couple of nights and went to a costume fitting as well as a wig and hair fitting. And I was so excited to walk into the Minskoff for the first time and do the hair and wig fitting. And I remember not really understanding what was happening, but just being thrilled to be in a Broadway hair studio. And John, who was head of hair at the time, on my way out after the fitting, I was telling him a little bit about me, and he just started handing me products. He was like, look, you're with us, you're gonna be with us, here's some products for you to try. And he was handing me like some Shea Moisture products, I'll never forget that, and some Jane Carter products. And I thought that was so cool that the Lion King provides hair products as well as skin care products for the cast. They encourage us to have natural hair, which is actually amazing. And they've done some research, and asking us is also research just in the community, figuring out what products work best for our hair. So I thought it was really cool that John offered those products to me. And it was a good way of welcoming me into the fold in a way. So then I went to my costume fitting, and they had mock-ups of everything in muslin, and they just kind of like fitted that on me, and I got to meet the woman who actually makes the beaded corsets, and she was actually stitching up my corset and putting it on bead by bead, and that was thrilling. And then I got back on a flight and went back to tour. So I did all my fittings already, but when I got to my rehearsals, the costumes were still being created, because it does take quite a few weeks to build these costumes. They're very complex. So they had me use a rehearsal corset and a rehearsal nala head until those things were ready to go. And I think that my nala head, actually, I didn't have to use a rehearsal one. I was actually using the one I was going to use in the show, which is really good. So at this point, because rehearsals are with this rehearsal corset and the Nala head, I had to come to rehearsal every day in wig prep because the Nala head is fitted very tightly to your scalp, and I needed to know what it felt like to have that head on and get used to that feeling and that movement and everything. So let's move to the movement. When I first started to learn the movement, well, I was going to the gym every morning. I joined the gym right away because I realized how physical the show was going to be and that I needed to come to rehearsal warm every day. So I joined a gym in Harlem, New York Sports Club, and I hired a trainer. I paid for 3 training sessions. Well, unfortunately, I scheduled my training session for the same day that I was having my first movement call with Bravita Threet, who is a very, very close friend of mine. This is my first day meeting her. And so Bravita Threet is the dance captain at the Lion King, and she was charged with teaching me, or conditioning me actually. She never really taught me any choreo, she was just conditioning me. I didn't know that. I thought that the first day I would just be learning. Well, I went to my training session, and then 2 hours later, I was sweating my butt off with Bravita, training all over again. And so she conditioned me, I want to say at least 4 or 5 sessions before I even got on the stage and started learning the choreography. Ruth Lynn Solomons was the dance director at the Minskoff and has been for several years, taught me the choreography. And I love the way Ruth Lynn teaches because a lot of times it's intention driven, and intention driven teaching works for me. It works for my brain. It helps me remember the choreography and remember why I'm doing it and attach it to something. Now, I'm not gonna tout any notion that I am a dancer or a mover in any kind of way. It takes me a while to learn choreography, and when I do, it takes a little more time for me to feel comfortable with it too. And that's kind of what happened with my experience with the Lion King, is that I needed to find my self-assurance so that I could do the job and wash away all the fear and the self-doubt and the judgment I was placing on myself, and just really like enjoy the part and enjoy the movement and the history of it all, filling all the shoes of all the knowledge that came before me. I just wanted to do them justice. I felt a lot of pressure to do them justice. So I learned the choreography and I learned all the blocking, and then the last couple of weeks was really just drilling it. And when I was rehearsing, I was called with everyone that played every part. And usually I was called with the understudies. Very rarely did they call in, Fred Berman and Ben Jeffrey, who actually played Timon and Pumbaa. They usually called in Jim Ferris or Tom Warren. And that was great too, but it just changed the dynamic when I actually got on stage and got to learn Jim and Ben a little better. They did call Jelani quite a bit, but they also called his covers. So I worked with Joel. Joel was the first Simba I worked on the fight with. I worked with Mdu, and I worked with Kyle. And I worked with all of the Simbas the entire time that I was learning the part. And that had a good side and a bad side to it. The good side is that you're getting to know everyone you will eventually work with on stage. And you're also getting to know your cast members. Otherwise, I'd be completely isolated and I wouldn't be getting to know anyone. The bad side is that everyone moves differently. And I'm learning something that feels uncomfortable to my body, and getting used to one person was difficult enough, but getting used to how everyone does the Nala Simba fight or the Can You Feel dance, that was a challenge for me. I would say overall, I really enjoyed doing the scenes. I really enjoyed singing. The scariest part for me for this rehearsal process was the movement, and that stayed present probably for my first year. I got gradually more and more confident, but I always had this devil on my back telling me that I had no business there and that I didn't know what I was doing. And that sucked, because here I am in my Broadway debut and all I can think about is how I don't deserve it, or that I'm not good enough, or that they're gonna fire me. You know, like I had a lot of terrible thoughts, and I'm just being transparent with you because I think it's useful for people to hear that side of it, that you can book something and still feel like you're not worthy, or that you're doing something wrong, or that people are disappointed in you. Okay, so my put-in. For those of you who don't know what a put-in is a rehearsal that is on stage with as many elements of the real show that you can have for that moment. So the music, the sound, the lights, the mics, bodies on stage. Most of the cast is called for put-ins, and you do the full show, or you do at least all the parts that actor who's being put in, you do those parts. And so it's usually in full costume for the actor that they're putting in, actor or actors. Sometimes put-ins can have several actors being put in at the same time. So for my put-in, I remember going up to makeup, and Elizabeth Cohen, who's the makeup artist, she's amazing and has been with the show since the beginning. She's head of makeup, and she also does the makeup for Nala and for Scar. Yeah, Nala and Scar, yes. And also Timon. She does Timon's makeup too. Anyway, she did my makeup, and we had a chat about sweating and stuff. And I was like, well, hey, Elizabeth, I'm a sweater. I do sweat. And she was like, well, let's just put the water-based paint on first because it's better for your skin, and then we'll see what happens. And I was like, okay. But I knew that I was gonna sweat, and I was already nervous to perform for the existing cast. So I was terrified about looking bad. So anyway, got the makeup on, put on my costume. Sorry, I don't have any photos of this. I was probably too nervous to even think about taking a selfie. And I went out for my put-in, and Jelani was actually sick for my put-in, so he wasn't there. So I did my put-in with Imdu. And we had worked in rehearsals a lot together, but something went wrong during the fight, and I fell, and I got back up and I finished. And I remember just thinking at the end of the whole put-in, I felt scared. The put-in was scheduled on the Friday before my actual debut. So I was scared. I felt like, oh no, what if I fall during the fight on my debut, or my family's there? Will they be disappointed in me? And I guess I just kept clocking, okay, what can I do to make this better? What can I do different? Is this going to get any easier? Is this going to get better? And it did get better. But if I'm being honest with you, it was all terrifying and scary and exciting and exhilarating, and just, you name it, all the emotions were in it. So on Saturday, after my put-in, I had my last rehearsal. And I did not do anything Lion King related except practice on my own until Tuesday, the day of my debut.